Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was the son of Apollo and guardian of Hades' children. Minato Namikaze was an alias, used unwillingly by a punished Apollo. Once he realized what had happened, the god struck a deal. 15 years later, Naruto Uzumaki is taken from the leaf by the god. 7 years after that, he takes his post as the guardian of Hades' children. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 11. Here it is, Naruto said to the group as they walked into the station. Sun-West line only goes in one direction. If you miss it, you miss it. Inwardly, somewhere deep inside his heart, Naruto thought his father needed to reacquaint himself with the way of the ninja if this was his plan to help them while working under the radar. That's a bad slogan, Grover mused as he stepped in the train, his eyes going wide as the lights came on. Whoa. The others followed the satyr and replicated his shock. Well, everyone but Naruto did. The blonde stood at the back and palmed his head. Of course, the train they were riding was a freight train that carried the most expensive and stylish model of cars. It was like his father just didn't care about keeping his identity to himself. Dad. Seriously. That does it. I am so telling Mom that you're slacking off with your shinobi training. Naruto exclaimed in his head as he groaned softly. Percy ran for the Maserati Spider with Grover soon chasing after him. Zoe and Phoebe took a nice silver Ford Mustang, leaving him and Thalia to find their own seats. Hardtop or convertible? Naruto jokingly asked the girl, only to see her heading for the sleek black Dodge Charger near the back. The blonde arched a brow before grinning. Hey, if she doesn't want to use this opportunity to corner me, then who am I to complain? Naruto thought with a grin before he headed over to the lonely burnt orange Challenger, the same model as his last one, which was nice. He had taken a shine to the car and was planning on customizing it with the Hephaestus cabin, until Kakashi blew it to high Olympus that is. Kinda wish he didn't do that, Naruto grumbled inwardly to himself as he jimmied the lock and got in the car's driver's seat. Closing his eyes, Naruto leaned back into the comfy leather and sighed in relief before falling into a dreamless sleep once again. 20 minutes later, there was a flare of chakra and Naruto sighed as it woke him up. Sorry about that, didn't mean to wake ya, a whistling voice apologized. Naruto looked to his right and gave a tired look to the homeless man. The two were silent for a moment before the blonde demigod arched a brow and asked, So, Fred, huh? Couldn't think of anything better. Shut up, brat, Fred replied as his features changed into his chosen form for the Hidden Lands, revealing him to be Apollo. The god of the sun opened the other door and sat in, giving his son a smile. So what y'all think? Am I the best or what? I knew it was you from the beginning, Naruto snorted out as he closed his eyes, all this going to be worth it in the end. You know my motto, fish cake, Apollo replied, getting a growl out of his son for the name, those who break the rules are trash. Yeah, I know the rest, Naruto grumpily replied, now if you don't mind, I'm trying to sleep. Why don't you go bother Jackson? Apollo sighed, Naruto, you can't keep this grudge against the boy up. It's going to cause a rift in the camp if it continues. Naruto glanced at his father from the corner of one cracked eye. I know. It'll work out in the end, Dad. You just gotta have some faith in me. You're seriously going to corner him into a fight? What, you think he's like that Sasuke kid? Apollo asked with an arched brow. Hell no, if anything Percy Jackson is 10 times the human that Sasuke Uchiha is, Naruto grunted out, he's like me, before you pulled me out of the nations. Then try going about changing him in a different way, the god suggested, right now all you have is a lot of tension and soon enough he's going to snap. I know what I was like, Dad, Naruto shot back quietly, and I know just what he needs. He needs a Sasuke Uchiha. You're going to recreate the Nami Bridge incident, are you out of your mind? Apollo raged, getting his son to look at him, do you know what my uncle will do to me if I let you go through with that? Naruto blinked and looked at his father, which one? The scary one. Apollo replied with a terrified look on his face. The blonde demigod stared at his father for a moment. You gotta give me a little more than that, Dad. Ha ha, you're hilarious, Apollo deadpanned. They sat quietly for a moment before the god of the sun sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Order, give me strength. If you successfully recreate the bridge incident, you are not going to try and kill him, are you? Who do you think I am, Sasuke? The blonde replied with a smirk before it fell into a frown, and he looked forward. The Titans are recruiting Konoha. I know, Apollo sighed out as he covered his eyes with his hand. Shinobi are going to be a part of the war. Yep. The masked Uchiha spoke to me at the museum. Yeah, wait a minute, say that again. Apollo looked at his eldest child. That Madara wannabe you warned me about. Naruto confirmed his father's fears. He's here, and he knows about the crooked one. Apollo shivered at the mention of his father's sworn nemesis. He looked at his son, who was now biting a nail in nervousness and staring ahead. Apollo frowned. What else did he say, Naruto? Naruto hesitated as he was taken back to the vision forced upon him. The many dead friends at his feet, the implied death of his father and aunt, the Big Three's defeat. Then there was the eye. That giant red orb staring at him, forcing him to take the brunt of its power full on. The killing intent that oozed from it made him feel like he was a small boy in Konoha all over again. Alone in his apartment when there was a bump in the dark and he didn't know what caused it. Hey, you okay, kiddo? Apollo asked in concern as he noticed Naruto's eyes glisten over. The blonde inhaled sharply before nodding as he was shaken from the thought. Naruto rubbed his eyes and mentally groaned. Now he wasn't going to sleep for 2 reasons. That thought made him look at his father and ask, have you been giving me visions of the future? No, why? The god asked before his eyes widened in realization, you're having visions. Sort of, but they're more like jumbled warnings, Naruto muttered in response as he rubbed his temple. Gods above, I swear if it's the fates, I'm going to kill something. Relax, kiddo, they've always got a reason for what they do, Apollo reassured his son while mentally growling, but they should know damn better to give a demigod mixed messages. It'll get him killed, again. Last time that happened, oh boy was I given a beating from his mother. Nice of Uncle Deadhead to let me see her again every so often, though. Dad, this has been a wonderful heart-to-heart and all, but you really have to get back to Olympus, Naruto suddenly said. The god frowned, but before he could speak, Naruto gave him a look that he obviously got from his mother. I can't keep an eye on both you and Jackson, Dad. Tisk, ruin my fun, Apollo grumbled. Fine. Just do me one thing, Naruto. What? Apollo grinned at his son. Be sure to use protection when you and Thalia do the deed. Why, you asshole? Naruto reached for his father in order to strangle him, only for the god in question to vanish in a bright flash of light. His laughter echoed in the train but was drowned out by the train's horn. The blonde groaned and ducked his head down, crossing his arms as he tried to get back to sleep. The images his father's words left him with, however, made it much harder to, no pun intended. The thought of him and Thalia doing that led him to think about his feelings for the raven-haired girl. She's headstrong, brave, and cares for her friends almost as ferociously as I do, he mused with a small smile, not to mention her time as a tree didn't hurt her figure, though I probably won't say that to her face. Ever. She'd probably hit me for the compliment. Why does my relationship with Thalia remind me of something? Ah well, I'll dwell on this later. Maybe I should get some shut-eye. While Naruto was thinking about his relationship with the daughter of Zeus, Percy was dreaming of a time long since past. He dreamt of a girl that looked faintly familiar to him, and receiving a blade that he already had in his possession. Percy didn't have control of himself in the dream, saying things out of character for himself and acting absurdly cocky, like he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Before the end of it, though, Percy realized that he wasn't in his own body, but was viewing a memory from another's perspective. He also realized who the girl in his dream was. Zoe Nightshade. Percy's eyes snapped open as he heard the passenger door open and he looked to see the homeless guy that led them to the train sitting down. He opened his mouth to ask him what he was doing when the man spoke. Have a nice dream, Mr. Jackson. How do you know my name? Percy asked warily, reaching for Riptide. A familiar pressure washed over him and Percy started to sweat as heat followed it. Looking at the smiling man, he was shocked to find the face of Naruto's father grinning back at him. Well, for one thing you just told me, Apollo joked, getting Percy to palm his face. Undeterred, the god continued, and for another thing, I wouldn't be a good prophet if I didn't know the names of people important to the fate of Olympus. What do you mean? Percy asked. Apollo smiled and tapped the side of his nose. That would be telling, young hero, the god of the sun replied knowingly. He then looked at the rearview mirror back to where Naruto's challenger sat. Before Percy could ask a question, Apollo spoke, do you know why he's an asshole to you? Huh? Apollo grinned over at the confused teen, you're just like how he used to be, before he saved his village the first time. Man, was I impressed after I found out. I'm still mad I had to get that story from him after he was resurrected, though. The first time. Percy repeated in disbelief. Stopped a giant sand monster, about as tall as the Empire State Building with the mist around it. The god chuckled at the gaping teen's face and continued, he thinks he changed after I brought him from his home to the States, but if anything all he did was hone his planning abilities. He's still the same knucklehead no matter how hard he tries to hide it. No offense, but that doesn't explain why he's an asshole, Percy muttered. Apollo gave the kid a shrug. In his opinion, you're too much like he was as a kid, Apollo explained, a portion of him, a good portion, despises how naive he was. He almost died multiple times and he doesn't want that to happen to you. Still confused, Percy asked, so, he's a dick to me because he likes me? I can see why he dislikes you sometimes, Apollo groaned as he rubbed the bridge of his nose, you're very slow on the uptake, Percy Jackson. He's not doing it for you, more so he's doing it for your little girlfriend. Percy blushed and looked away, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh please, Apollo rolled his eyes, look, Aphrodite might be the goddess of love, but I'm pretty good at spotting those smitten with the opposite sex. I'm the god of poems, remember? Father to Shakespeare. I could go on, but the point is I know when a guy likes a girl. And you, my young friend, have the hots for Athena's daughter. No I don't. Percy protested weakly. Apollo laughed. Yeah, right, and my kid doesn't threaten me with violence with each encounter, the god snickered out. Once he finished he continued, it's for that reason alone that Naruto's such an asshole to you. You're an only child, so you don't know what it's like to protect a younger sibling, but Naruto, aside from his actual siblings he has several pseudo-siblings. He's got experience at cheering kids up and making them see him as an older brother. That's how it is with that daughter of Athena. I think I get it, Percy said after a moment, Naruto's acting like an overprotective big brother, right? Trying to scare me away from Annabeth. Apollo palmed his face, no. How in the name of my family are you this dumb? Seriously? Hey. Percy pouted at the god, I'm not dumb. Apollo looked at the son of Poseidon and spoke slowly, okay, he's a dick to you so that you grow up and don't die. If you died, and follow me on this, it would hurt Annabeth. You get that? Well, yeah, she's my friend so she'd be sad, right? Percy said, following though still meant he was being talked to like he was an idiot. Good, that's progress, Apollo joked before continuing, now Naruto is a protective big brother, so he's going to keep Annabeth from being hurt in any way, shape, or form. Emotional pain is what he considers to be the worst pain possible, so can you see where I'm going with this? Percy thought the god's words over before nodding slowly, Naruto's mean to me, because he wants me to grow up and stay alive for Annabeth's sake? That doesn't make sense to me. It's not supposed to, it's not your logic, said Apollo before he continued with a shrug, it's Naruto's logic. He's my son and even I don't understand him sometimes. I mean seriously, who turns down an offer from 3 call girls? Sure they wore him down eventually but still, the fact that they had to just boggles my mind. That actually happened? Percy asked with a blush on his face. It was then that he realized maybe Naruto had more to offer than fighting advice. Yeah. What, you think he made it up just to piss Arte off? At the mention of his sister Apollo's smile immediately died and he looked away. Percy shivered as the heat started to vanish with Apollo's enthusiasm. The god of the sun was quiet once more for a long time. Apollo. Percy hesitantly reached out to the god with his voice, only for the sun god to snap from his depression and force a smile on his face. Sorry, I zoned out there for a second, Apollo apologized before he opened the door. Listen, I can't say too much, but I can tell you this, find Nereus, the old man of the sea. He'll help you find what you're looking for. Nereus. Percy repeated in confusion. The god grinned and nodded before becoming serious. Another wave of pressure hit the son of Poseidon. You'd best find my sister, Percy Jackson, Apollo warned. If there's one thing my son and I share, it's the protective nature of a big brother. But, aren't they twins? Percy thought absent-mindedly while also nodding his head. The god of the sun grinned and stepped out of the spider, leaving the shivering demigod to think about what Apollo had said. Naruto woke up silently as the train came to a hissing stop and stretched as much as he could in his seat. He went to get out of the car when a note taped to the rearview mirror caught his eye. Looking it over, Naruto smiled when he saw that it was a note from his dad. Naruto. I heard what Kakabaka did to your last ride. Can't be having you riding around in another lame-ass van, can we? Consider this a late birthday present. Just channel chakra into the steering wheel. With love from the best dad ever. P.S. Open the glove box before you channel chakra. Consider it a gift that you'll need later. Naruto arched a brow at the postscriptum before shrugging and doing as it said. Opening the glove box, the blonde found a smaller black box about the size of his wallet. Flipping the box over, the blonde's face turned bright red and he scowled. He threw the box out of the car and immediately channeled chakra to the wheel. In a poof of smoke, Naruto dropped to the ground next to a moderately sized scroll. With a groan, he sat back up and grabbed the scroll, his face still flushed from the purpose of the surprise his father left him. Grumbling about a perverted bloodline and concerns that his aunt and God's forbid, mother might think he was converted were heard from the rest of the group as he joined up with them. The lieutenant of Artemis Hunters arched a collective brow at the blonde attitude and Zoe was the first to ask, "What's wrong, Uzumaki?" Naruto remained in his dark mood while he muttered about some perverted toad, his terrifying mother, and cursing his father. All the while he refused to make eye contact with the three females accompanying him. Whiskers. Are you okay? Thalia asked, putting a hand on his shoulder. The blonde tensed and shivered before shaking his head. Snapped out of his trance, Naruto looked around at the group before his eyes locked on Thalia. He fought down another blush and looked away at Percy, who also seemed confused about something. He realized the group, save a distracted Percy, was staring at him, and replied to Thalia's question, "Why yeah, I'm good Thalia-chan. Just an argument with our conductor of sorts." "If you say so," Thalia replied unsurely before her eyes widened and she glared at him. "Hey, wait a minute, I still had questions for you." "Well, damn it," Naruto sighed in defeat while scratching the back of his head, "let's get our bearings first before we do anything else." "Like interrogate me." "Fine, but I'm holding you to it like you promised," Thalia said to him before pushing past the group and walking off the train. Percy and Grover were quick to follow, the former still deep in thought while the latter was muttering something about coffee. Naruto gaped at her form before following after his fellow demigods. "Hey. I didn't promise that you could interrogate me. Thalia-chan, wait up. Gods, their romance is annoying and distracting." Zoe grumbled as she and Phoebe followed the two. "Lady Artemis best be safe or I'll string them up as an offering to placate Lord Zeus' anger. I'm sure we could just sacrifice Uzumaki now and get more time to save Lady Artemis, perhaps some support as well," Phoebe mused with a small smile as she thought about doing just that. "Then again, Lady Artemis is fond of him," Zoe groaned. "Why must he be a man, though? If he were a girl I'd have no qualms about following his orders." "Perhaps she would have been a sister to us as well," Phoebe thought aloud before she laughed. "Could you imagine it if he was turned into a girl?" "The shock would probably kill him," Zoe admitted with a smirk. Oh, how little the two hunters knew that the blonde had already experienced life as a girl. In the few times he had stumbled across the hunters and his aunt, Naruto never once showed them his first self-developed technique. He did so for two reasons, the first being his aunt was already enough of a man-hater so he didn't need to ruin their relationship by transforming into a naked girl. The second being his own mother's threat to him after he was returned to life and struck a deal with his grand-uncle. Needless to say, it'd be a good long time before Naruto returned to pranking perverts with his anti-pervert technique. Ahead of the two laughing hunters, just outside the small New Mexico town of Cloudcroft, Naruto was trying to get Thalia to lay off until they finished the quest. So far it's been refusal after refusal, so Naruto decided to pull out his signature weapon when arguing with a member of the opposite sex, Kawaii no Jutsu. Fine. Thalia relented as she blushed and looked away. Just change back already. It's weird seeing you like that. Naruto grinned and was enveloped with a poof of smoke before giving the girl a one-armed hug. Inwardly he thought, female, 0, Kawaii no Jutsu, 14. The technique was a simple transformation technique, much like his signature weapon against perverts, only this turned him into a 6-year-old version of himself. He would water his eyes and look up at his target. Jutting his bottom lip out, he would then ask in a depressed tone for what he wanted, and usually it came out to be a full success. His mother and grandaunt certainly fell for it. Remembering how he had to pull it out against his great-aunt Hestia made him smile. He never expected her of all people to be as big a ramen fan as he and his father were. He found out the hard way when they met in a grocery store while replenishing his ramen supply. After successfully defeating her and discovering she was his great-aunt, he invited her to a local restaurant to talk. Learning that their shared love for Eastern meals was the reason Hestia once considered his father for a husband made him bust a gut. It was the start of a great familial relationship, and the thought of said bond always made him happy. Geez, where's a Starbucks when you need it? Grover asked the group, snapping Naruto from his thoughts about his fellow ramen-loving family members. The satyr yawned and continued, I mean, really we should dash. The satyr froze mid-step and the group looked at him in confusion. Zoe and Phoebe froze shortly afterward, and Naruto, who was about to ask what was going on, joined them. Percy and Thalia were stuck with 4 teens frozen in place, eyes dilated and breathing softly. Thalia began shaking Naruto in worry while Percy waved a hand over Grover's face. Okay, this is weird, Percy mumbled before looking at Thalia. Any luck? No, damn it, snap out of it, Whiskers. Thalia said before smacking the blonde across the face. Unlike many times before, her strike failed to break him of his trance. The sound did wake both Zoe and Phoebe from their trances. The hunters immediately went on the defensive and pulled their bows out, taking aim to the northeast. Hurry, wake thy friends. We have to move. Zoe ordered as she and Phoebe drew their bows. I'm working on it, Nightshade. Thalia replied before grabbing the blonde before her by both shoulders. Damn it, Naruto, wake up. We need you awake. G-man. Dude, come on, wake up. Percy said while shaking his friend by the shoulders. Grover slowly came out his trance and mumbled something. What was that, buddy? Percy asked his friend in concern. Grover looked in the direction Zoe and Phoebe were aiming their arrows in, and a wide smile crossed his face. A gift from the wild. He said louder, snapping Naruto from his trance. Naruto followed the satyr's gaze and his own widened in horror. He grabbed Thalia's wrist and began running west. Run. He called over his shoulder. The others exchanged a look before following after him. Grover reluctantly did so, only thanks to Percy's grip on his arm. Come on, Grover, we gotta move. What are we running from? Thalia asked loudly. Naruto didn't look back and didn't reply. He suddenly came to a stop and began sniffing the air. The hunters eyed him curiously, while Thalia and Percy thought something was wrong with the teen. Naruto continued to sniff the air before he tensed. Under his breath, the appointed guardian of Hades' children whispered, It's here. A gift from the wild. Grover exclaimed once more, only to get a hand clamped over his mouth by his best friend. He silently agreed to quiet down with a glance and was freed from the hand. Percy then looked worriedly around him while the hunters and the 2 elder teens tensed for a fight. The son of Poseidon heard a snort and he slowly turned his head to the area behind him, coming face to face with a large snout. The others followed his gaze and their eyes widened as the largest boar they've ever seen snorted steam right in the raven-haired teen's face. Gods above! Naruto whispered as he looked over the creature in fear. It stood at a whopping 30 feet high and had tusks the size of canoes. What do we do? Percy asked those around him in a hushed tone. Run, as fast as you can, Naruto replied quietly. The boar seemed to hear him as at that moment it let out a head-splitting squeal. Run. Meanwhile on Olympus, we follow the goddess of love as she once again exits from her room. This time she has a smile on her face. Unknown to said goddess, a certain curious god of thieves is following her. Hermes left George and Martha back in his temple so that he could successfully follow her without risking being spotted. Unsurprisingly, the goddess of love walked past the other temples and entered that of the god of war. Hermes pressed himself against a door after it was shut and listened closely, displaying his rarely used skills as a thief. "I need you to do this for me, Ares," Aphrodite pleaded in a feigned manner, "please? I just need to show a little muscle." "Oh please, I'm listening in on their foreplay." "Black, I'm outta here," Hermes thought. He prepared to walk away nonchalantly when Ares' response stopped him. "No fucking way, Dite," Ares snarled, making Hermes furrow his brow in surprise. "I ain't going to see Apollo's kid again. You know how embarrassing that was. Hell, you were one of the first to laugh." While Hermes racked his brain to recall what might have happened between Naruto and Ares, the god in question continued his rant, "And then there's fact that Prissy Jackson's there, too, definitely makes me reluctant to go. Last thing I need to do is piss Uncle Poseidon off again. When Poseidon found out we fought and I almost killed his son, I'm not afraid of much, but damn if he didn't do a good job making me afraid of him. He's just like Dad when he's pissed, except it's with water. Fucking water. Do you know how painful water can be? Oh please, Ares, man up for once. I just need it to look like you'll kill him if he's out of line," Aphrodite said in response. "I'll do something special for you if you help me." "And how is that any different from every other night?" Ares asked. There was whispering that Hermes couldn't catch, but whatever it was made Ares reply in lust-filled excitement, "I'm in." "Good. Now give me a few hours to prepare," Aphrodite replied. Hermes knew that was the end of it and slipped away, his curiosity raised. Whatever happened between Ares and Naruto made Ares wary of interacting with the kid again. Now all he had to do was remember what had happened. Chapter 12. Keep moving. Zoe yelled as they ran through the snowy mountains of New Mexico. Behind them, the monstrous boar squealed angrily as it chased them in a manner that could be called obsessed. The group had tried to face it when they reached a clearing in the pines that made up a forest, only for Grover to stop each of them with a plea. Naruto made sure to remember this incident, just so he could get even with the satyr making them flee from the beast. Maybe he could make a bit of tofu bacon and then force-feed it to him under the guise of it being the real thing. The planning would have to wait because... Hey now! Watch the Tusky walking buffet! Naruto cried out as one of the calcium-filled forms of defense grazed him on the ass. If his pants were torn, there would be hell to pay, damn the consequences. Sorry G, but the pig might have to die. Naruto mentally growled as one of his hands reached behind him to check for a scratch. He looked as best he could over his shoulder at the jacket, surprised at its durability. Then again, it was the hide of the Nemean lion, so he shouldn't be so surprised. It did survive a cat-on technique after all. He then looked forward and wondered why he was at the end of the group. His thoughts were cut off by Phoebe's cry of, "Scatter!" Naruto groaned as the hunters broke off to the left, followed by a bleeding Grover and an impressively running Percy, though he attuned that to the teen's previous quests in which he ran away while thinking of a plan, while he and Thalia decided to run towards a cave in the distance. Thalia stumbled over something peeking out from the snow, nearly falling but being helped back up by Naruto, who was starting to use chakra in his run. He didn't do so earlier because he didn't want to leave the group behind. Now it would be a moot point seeing as the group had separated. "Those were railroad tracks," Thalia said as they gained some distance from the boar that was trying to skewer the teens on its tusks. Naruto took what she said into consideration. "Then if I'm right, we've got the best bet of stopping this thing if that tunnel turns out to be too small," he replied as they ran into the tunnel. They heard a displeased squeal and Naruto grinned, "Guess it's not happy with the slight squeeze." The two teens kept running until they saw a light at the end. Naruto opened his mouth, but Thalia cut him off. "If you say anything about ironically running towards the light, I will trip you." "You're no fun, Thalia-chan," grumbled the blonde before they came to a stop just at the edge of the tunnel. Naruto groaned at what he saw while Thalia just paled to the point that her skin was just as white as the snow around her. The older demigod just looked up at the sky. Seriously? What the fuck? He asked in aggravation, due to the tracks being destroyed and collapsed just a bit outside of the tunnel. He looked at his companion and took hold of Thalia's arm as she tried to back away from the edge. The girl's electric blue eyes were as wide as dinner plates and she was muttering incoherently under her breath. Looking behind him, he could see the large figure of the boar rushing towards them, snorting and squealing out a war cry. He took a deep breath, realizing there was only one solution before looking at Thalia. "Thalia-chan, listen to me. We have to hold our ground," he insisted. "Are you out of your goddamn mind?" Thalia practically shrieked as she looked at him. "That pig will push us over the edge. That's a good 100 feet. We'd die from the fall." "We'll be fine," he argued. "Or we'd land on some sharp debris and then die. There's got to be another way. We can double back and dash." "There's no time to double back," Naruto cut Thalia off before lightly cupping her cheek. "We've got 30 seconds till that thing gets to the edge. We have to jump at the right moment. Do you trust me?" "I dash." There was an echoed squeal behind them and Naruto did some quick math in his head. 18 seconds, Thalia. "Do you trust me?" Blue eyes looked into his and he saw the hesitation in her eyes. Her fear was getting the best of her. The demironic fear he made fun of when they first had to deal with it 7 years ago. He hoped that she trusted him, because he's been giving her enough reasons not to. There was another squeal and Naruto cursed. They had 15 seconds at best. She was still conflicted, he couldn't wait for an answer, but he needed her coherent for his plan to work. This meant that he had to get her out of her fear-induced state. He couldn't think of anything that would work, so he went with his gut and prayed that it wasn't wrong. Moving his head forward, his lips met hers in a kiss. He poured feeling into it, his feelings for her, his reassurance that they'd be fine so long as she trusted him. The daughter of Zeus' eyes swiftly lost their fear as confusion and shock took its place. Sure enough though, her shock ebbed away and she returned his initiated kiss, showing her own feelings as their lips stayed locked, giving him her trust in an intimate manner. His hand went from her arm to her waist while her arms wrapped around his neck. Another squeal, this one much closer, caused the two to break the kiss. Breathing heavily, they parted and looked each other in the eyes. Naruto pressed his forehead against hers and whispered just as the boar was a second away from barreling into them. Hiraishin no Jutsu. A bright yellow flash momentarily blinded the boar, making it squeal in pain and try to stop its charge. It managed to guide itself slightly to the left, becoming airborne against its will. A loud frightened squeal filled the sky as the boar fell and impacted with the snow, becoming thoroughly stuck as it sank into the thick snow-covered ground. Thankfully, it avoided the debris. A good few feet away just as the boar began to fly, Naruto and Thalia reappeared in a close embrace. The two were still panting lightly from their kiss, both wondering what happened now. Thalia knew she wanted to know more about the enigmatic blonde. She'd been drawn to him when they were younger by his mysterious past, charmed by his kindness and startling good looks gifted to him by his parents. She had issues showing her true feelings though, which is why she always seemed to be mad at him. Being stuck as a tree for 5 years didn't help her develop emotional maturity. Thalia decided one thing in her tree, though. When she'd get free, she'd find the blonde boy and get what she wanted. She wanted Naruto to be hers, much like her father when he found a woman to bed, only this was more emotionally based than based off of lust. This realization brought forth another and Thalia slowly leaned forward to initiate another breathtaking kiss, fully intent on claiming the blonde's lips as hers. And Nightshade wanted me to swear this off? Thalia absently thought as she pulled the blonde's head down closer to her. Naruto, who was wondering how badly Thalia was going to react to him kissing her, was surprised when her lips pressed against his once again. He thought about his musings of the girl kissing him when he was in his car as the group traveled via Soul Train. Apparently, he wasn't the only one that felt that way. This realization made him put his heart into the kiss once again. Percy was gaping when he stumbled across the two teens kissing each other after following the sound of pig squeals. While the boar was shuffling in its self-made hole, Naruto and Thalia were attached at the lips. He figured there was some attraction between the two, confirmed after Grover flat out told him so back in Washington, D.C., but to make out just inches away from death. That lucky son of a dash. Percy stopped his thoughts as he briefly imagined doing the same with Annabeth. He pushed those thoughts aside with a blush when he realized what he was thinking about. He did enjoy the embarrassed/disgusted/intrigued looks Phoebe and Zoe were giving the two. Although red-faced in embarrassment, Zoe looked like she was going to puke as she watched the two. And for someone who always looked like she was holier than thou, it was one of those sights where he wished he had a camera. Phoebe simply had a red face while she looking like was trying to understand something. He expected her to be scowling outright at the sight, considering her previous interactions with the blonde, but nope. Percy was surprised to see a contemplating look on her face, making him wonder what was running through her head at the moment. He did note that the two were a good match for each other. They were both tough, loved Annabeth as a sister, and as much as he hated to admit it, both were great at making fun of him. Now that he thought about it though, he remembered Apollo's words about Naruto's attitude towards him, which led Percy to remember the sun god's suggestion about the old man of the sea. He should probably speak up, but he really didn't want to for fear of the retribution one of the two partaking teens might bestow on him. Not that he could blame them, though. It was a perfect Kodak moment. Yes. I won the bet. Well, it was until Grover opened his big mouth. Thalia and Naruto broke their kiss abruptly and looked at the group with shock and embarrassment on their faces. Now, Percy acknowledged he had poor judgment, but he knew that now would not be the time to tease them. He did have some common sense after all. And some strong self-preservation instincts that were currently screaming at him to keep his mouth shut. Grover. Thalia growled as his words clicked in her head. The satyr paled as he realized the girl was looking towards him. She left Naruto's embrace and slowly began stalking towards the satyr, who looked like he was facing down death itself. Not the god of the underworld, no, he already did that once, thank you very much, but the entity that mortals called the Grim Reaper, the god of death himself, the Thanatos. Something that any mortal would fear. And now Thalia, let's be reasonable, Grover stuttered out as he backed away. The raven-haired girl made no move to stop and continued to stalk forward, her eyes glinting with promised pain and misfortune for the satyr. I have one question for you, Grover, Thalia started as she grabbed the goat man's shirt and brought him closer. Quietly she asked in a threatening tone, what? Bet. Back at Camp Half-Blood, Annabeth was playing with the kitten her brother sent back to the camp from D.C. She had named him Washington, after her most famous sibling and the kitten's birthplace. It was during this that she felt it. A cold chill that reminded her of wearing her baseball cap, which she was going to hopefully find in the Ares cabin, though they should know better than to take it, but far less potent in madness that accompanied Hades' signature aura. No, this was a more pain-filled promise type of aura. Scooping Washington up in her arms, Annabeth stood up and looked to the door of her cabin, swallowing slightly as the feeling faded away. Scratching the kitten behind the ear, she murmured, what was that? Naruto winced as Grover's scream of fear died down and he once again passed out. Granted, he was afraid of Thalia at that moment, but seriously, that's like the 8th time he's passed out. Naruto made a vow to improve Grover's tolerance to feminine anger in life-threatening situations. Come to think of it, wasn't he on that lightning thief quest and fought against Medusa? And he was kidnapped by a Cyclops, right? You'd think someone would get desensitized to this stuff after that. Then again, Naruto wasn't one to talk. He already died and came back to life, defeated a self-proclaimed god, and kicked the ass of the strongest chakra entity while in limbo. Not to mention he had a career that dealt with death almost every day. Then there was the fact he had let their group run off, probably making Grover feel responsible for him. Maybe he should apologize to the goat boy. Well, he could do that later, after he apologized to Thalia and Annabeth for the same reason, and recovered from the apology. Still, the fact remains, Grover needed to be able to handle feminine rage if he wanted to get a girlfriend. However, Naruto knew that Grover had good reason to pass out. Thalia was a scary girl sometimes. Nice job, Grace, now how will we get back on track? Phoebe asked with a scowl. Thalia sent her a glare and opened her mouth to retort but was interrupted by Zoe. It's her fault for getting distracted by Uzumaki, the hunter replied in disgust, I can't believe thou actually kissed him. Thy lips must now be tingling in pain. Hey, that's a low blow, Zoe-chan. Naruto replied with a pout. He looked at the blushing Thalia and said, I have it on good accord that I'm a great kisser. What did you think, Thalia? 10 out of 10. Yes, I mean, shut up. Thalia quickly corrected herself, her blush deepening before she looked at Zoe with a glare. I don't want to deal with you right now. What I want to know is how much time do we have left, where are we, and what the hell was Grover talking about? It's been 2 days, Naruto answered as he looked at the sky, and Dad's afterglow is just around 250. We've got less than 4 days to find Auntie Arte. We're in New Mexico, Percy supplied helpfully. I caught a glance at the sign when we got off the train. Speaking of, Naruto, did you know that dash? Yeah, I knew it was my dad, the blonde dismissed with a wave before crossing his arms and looking away. Hard to forget when Dad snuck a box of condoms in my car. He snuck you what? Phoebe asked with a furrowed brow. Nothing, just forget I said anything, replied the guardian as he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Now as to how we get west, I say we all climb aboard the Pork Chop Express here. My cousin had to have a good reason to send him our way. Cousin? Percy asked as he helped awaken Grover to his feet. Hooves. The satyr stood up and used Percy as a human shield to keep Thalia from getting to him. The boar started to slowly rise out of its hole, snorting and squealing quietly as it did so. You know, god of the wild, son of Hermes. Naruto replied nonchalantly as he patted the side of the boar, I mean, who else can send us the Erymanthian boar? Then I was right. Grover announced with a smile as he leaned against the boar's side, it's a gift from the wild. Wait, but who sent him? Percy continued to ask while the others started to climb on the boar. Zoe rolled her eyes and took a seat in front of Phoebe, who sat before Thalia that plopped down in front of Naruto. Grover scrambled to the top of the boar's head and pulled out a stick, rope, and an apple he had packed and found respectively. The blonde helped the son of Poseidon aboard the boar before nodding to Grover. Naruto looked at Percy and spoke, You're an idiot, do you know that? Who is the one person Grover would do anything to find? Percy's eyes widened, You mean? Just before the boar arrived, Grover, the hunters and I felt the presence of Pan, Naruto answered softly. Giddy up. Grover called out as he dropped the lure in front of the boar's eyes. The giant beast's equally giant orbs focused on the fruit before him and escaped its trap with vigor. Soon enough, the sextet was once again on their way. Guess this is the end of the road, Naruto mumbled as the boar came to a stop somewhere in Arizona. He and Percy slid off with thankful groans. The boar was fast, that was for sure, but it's nowhere near comfortable. Oh gods above, that hurt, Naruto groaned before turning around and helping Thalia off the boar. If we ever go on a date, just know that I refuse to go bareback riding. Noted, Thalia replied softly as her cheeks heated up from being helped down. After he had taken his hands off her hips, she took a step back and looked around, taking notice of a small building in the distance. She then looked at the son of Apollo and said, There's a building nearby, maybe we can get our bearings there and some food. I'm all for some food. Zoe? Naruto asked, inquiring whether or not she wanted to get something to eat. Thalia gave a noticeable frown as he looked to the huntress in question. Thy plan is good, we should conserve our supplies for when we are away from civilization, Zoe said with a nod. Phoebe was already walking towards the town, and Percy could have sworn he saw stars in her eyes at the mention of food. Naruto turned to tell Grover to hurry up, only to palm his face at what he saw. The satyr was giving the boar a teary goodbye. While he understood that this renewed hope in the goat boy, he didn't need to waste 20 minutes saying goodbye to one of the planet's most dangerous creatures. G-man, come on, let's get some food, Percy said, thankfully speeding the farewell process up and getting Grover to return to the group. The 6 travelers made their way to the closed small building, only to find as they stood 10 feet away from the door that it was closed. Grover and Percy fell to their knees in anguish. Phoebe looked ready to join them from the disappointment on her face. Naruto sighed and scratched his head while both Zoe and Thalia flanked him and glared at the closed sign. Then there was a bright light behind them, making the group turn just as a large pink limousine pulled up nearby. The driver door opened and out came a man that just screamed bad news. Naruto noted that he was dressed in a suit that would be seen on Jason Statham and wore a chopper hat that looked way out of place for the man. Black sunglasses hid his eyes and his face was set in a permanent scowl. He and the others had different reactions to the man. While the group glared and hissed his name out, Naruto grinned mischievously and greeted the man, "Hello Uncle Aries." "Don't look at me like that, you stupid punk." Aries growled with a very uncharacteristic shudder from the look. "Oh come on, you're not still sore about losing are you?" Naruto inquired with a smirk. "I mean, you did accept my challenge." "Yeah, but when you said war I was expecting blood and guts." Not that." Aries shuddered. "Oh get over it. So you lost a prank war, big deal. Though, I still can't believe you fell for the whoopee Seiyushian," Naruto said with a smile as he recalled getting the best of the god of war in a prank war. Sure, Aries' pranks, though they were far from being pranks and leaning more towards homicidal traps, were dangerous to one's health. Naruto's were dangerous to one's ego. It didn't help that the deciding prank managed to replace all of Aries' attire with that of a Hello Kitty fan's complete room. Needless to say, Aries admitted defeat. "Stuff it you little brat, you're lucky I don't kill you, and that my girl likes you," though the second portion was said in a mutter. Aries recomposed himself and glared at Percy. You I won't hesitate to kill. I beat you once before, I'll do it again," Percy replied confidently. Naruto's respect for the kid went up a notch, but he kept that to himself. "Yeah, well, you're lucky I don't like to be violent in front of a lady," Aries grumbled as he walked towards the back. "Now you and Blondie, come on. I got stuff to do and the lady doesn't like to be kept waiting." "Hold on, Lord Aries, we won't let thou take them," Zoe said stepping forward. Aries turned around and a smirk crossed his face. "Yeah? I think you will. Last time I wasn't prepared to go all out," the god replied with a smirk as a sword manifested in front of him. He took hold of the handle and prepared himself. "We'll go with you, Uncle Aries," Naruto said, diffusing the situation before there could be one. "You guys wait here." "And do what?" Thalia countered as she brought her shield and spear out. Aries lowered his blade and snapped his fingers. The building they were across from came to life and the smell of freshly cooked food hit the teen's nostrils. Reluctantly, Thalia put her weapons away and crossed her arms. She glared at the blonde and relented. "Fine. But if anything happens to you, I'm blaming him." Aries shrugged. "Works for me. More anger equals more violence. Just go get some food, guys," Naruto sighed as he pushed Percy forward. "Come on water boy, let's go meet the pants of the relationship." Aries' eye twitched behind his glasses while he held the door open. He stopped Naruto from entering and shut the door behind Percy. Naruto arched his own brow but shrugged it off as the two settled into a comfortably tense silence. Odd, yes, but Naruto knew his uncle well enough not to try and entice a conversation, it would only lead to an argument. 5 minutes later, Percy came out with a contemplating look on his oddly flushed face. Aries pulled the son of Poseidon out of the way and pointed at Naruto. The blonde rolled his eyes and climbed in, noting how comfortable the seat was before looking at who summoned him. He caught a glimpse of what looked to be an older Thalia, his mother's face, a tanned girl he knew in California looking a bit older and even his aunt's usual features coming to the surface. Her hair was constantly changing textures and colors, primarily matching his mother's red and Thalia's raven locks. The one thing about her that wasn't constantly changing, aside from her bust size oddly enough, was her eye color. Her eyes were heterochromatic, with the left being electric blue and the right being a beautiful green. Just like Thalia's and his mother respectively. The woman giggled, a harmonic sound that made him blush. He knew she couldn't help but tease him, it was her nature as the goddess of love. Chapter 13. "So, what can I do for you, Lady Aphrodite?" Naruto asked, the first portion of the question coming out tightly from his beating heart. He regained control of himself quickly, but now he was embarrassed for the near squeak he had at the beginning. "Oh pooh, you're more like your aunt," Aphrodite sighed out in dismay, her chin resting on her hand. "Where's the fun son of Apollo? The wooer of women's son? The boy who is a flirtatious match for any female? He's out right now, you can leave a message if you like," Naruto replied, looking to his fingers in order to avoid eye contact. "Besides, your boyfriend is playing bouncer." Oh please, he's just a big teddy bear once you know how to persuade him, Aphrodite said with a dismissive wave of her hand. Naruto turned a little green and groaned at the thought. Aphrodite rolled her eyes at his response. You are your father's son, your mind goes straight to the gutter. Now, I didn't come here to talk to you about my sex life. Thank the gods, the blonde demigod thought in relief before he inquired, then why are you here, if I may ask? Manners? How charming. Oh, if only you'd gone to the camp sooner, Aphrodite sighed out as the possibilities flashed across her mind. Maybe one of my girls could have broken your heart. Thanks. The unsure Naruto replied. That was the one thing he didn't understand about the goddess of love. If she was all for people getting together, why did she want her children to break hearts? Honestly, it seemed way more than ass backwards if you asked him. Oh, there's no need to thank me, Aphrodite replied, ignoring his confusion. I do what I must, because I'm the only one who can. Now, as to why I'm here, I want to help you. Oh, this won't end well. Naruto thought as he paled, help me. Yes. With Zeus girl, the rough and tough act is a mask, you know, Aphrodite said matter-of-factly, she really just wants to be treated just like any other girl. Held, kissed, spoiled, the works. Which also means she wants to know about you. I'll tell her about me when I'm ready, Naruto replied softly. Oh, I'm not just talking about your past in the Hidden Lands, the goddess continued before eyeing the blonde slyly, I'm talking about your past relationships. What past relationships? Naruto asked with a furrowed brow before his eyes widened. Wait, you don't mean that dash. Oh but I do. Giggled out the goddess as the blonde paled significantly, I wonder how she'll respond to you knowing about the other campers you know. They're more like a small state if you ask me, Naruto grumbled as he ran a hand down the side of his face, man. When Thalia-chan finds out she's going to kill me. I don't know if I could handle dying again. Aphrodite squealed, I can't wait. The drama. The romance. Oh, it'll be right up there with Perkabeth. Naria versus Nana, whose heart will swell and whose will break. One of my finest works yet. Gee, glad to know you find my love life entertaining, snarked the blonde teen with a twitching brow. He rubbed his temples with both hands and continued softly, now I know why Auntie Arte doesn't like you. Ugh, Artemis, talk about a lost cause, scoffed the goddess, her hunters are no better. Especially that little nightshade brat. Oh, what I'd do just to get my hands around her neck for how many plans of mine she's ruined. Hey, I know she's a hunter and against everything you are, but she's still part of my family. Naruto defended the girl he considered a cousin. Aphrodite narrowed her eyes at the demigod, are you threatening me, demigod? No, but I won't let my cousin get threatened just because you don't agree with her, Naruto shot back with a glare. They held their gaze for a good few seconds before Aphrodite broke and squealed happily. The sudden noise caused Naruto to blink in confusion at the borderline bipolar mood swing before he was suddenly wrapped up in a hug. Blushing at the embrace, he was caught way off guard when Aphrodite kissed his cheek. Naruto lit up like a Christmas tree as the goddess sat back and squealed something incoherently. Either ignoring or ignorant of the blonde's dilemma, Aphrodite spoke, the familial protectiveness that you share with Apollo is so cute. You're just like your father, if not a bit more mature. TTH thanks, the still red Naruto replied. Inwardly he heard the Hallelujah chorus playing and he could imagine his dad giving him 2 thumbs up. He then imagined his mother and aunt slamming their fists onto the top of his head. Sadly, he knew that if he ever told the 3 of them in the same room, that would be the most likely scenario to occur. My family is so weird, internally groaned the blonde demigod while Aphrodite continued to list off Apollo's good qualities that he had inherited. Unfortunately, Naruto returned his focus on the goddess just as she said, and from your father you've gotten a rather impressive 9-inch long, 2-inch thick dash. Don't talk about that. Naruto cried out with a red face, thoroughly embarrassed by the thought of the goddess of love knowing his measurement, or Rhea forbid, his father's. What? Sex is a crucial part of romance, Aphrodite shrugged nonchalantly before grinning slyly at the blonde, and I should know. Those words have defiled my mind with the images inspired by them, Naruto groaned as his head fell back against the leather and his eyes closed. After recomposing himself, the blonde demigod asked, "Are you purposely delaying our quest, Lady Aphrodite?" "Oh heavens no. I've already helped you with that," the goddess said with a sly smile, "just ask Percy when you leave. I do want to know more about you and that Bologna girl, though. Oh, the scandal of a Roman and a Greek, Athena might just faint about it. Or kill me for being a traitor," grumbled the blonde as he rubbed his head. "Damn it, now I really need a drink." "Ah, chided Aphrodite, "no alcohol when on a quest. Law of the camp." "Since when?" Naruto asked incredulously. His dad never mentioned that law. Now how the hell was he supposed to get a goddamned drink? "Since Dionysus' son Mitchell died while inebriated some decade ago," the goddess answered with a smirk as the assigned guardian hung his head in depression. She looked at her buzzing phone and sighed, "Ugh, of course he wants to talk now. Well, I guess our time is up, Naruto." "Thank you, Uncle Hephaestus." Naruto thought to his uncle in gratitude. He smiled at the goddess. "Thank you for the talk, Lady Aphrodite." It was enlightening. As he prepared to go, Aphrodite stopped him with, "Wait, but you haven't heard what I want from you yet." Damn, Naruto's head hung and he sat back down. Rubbing his head, he then looked at the goddess and asked, "And what can I do for the goddess of love, that's not considered M-rated?" "You're far too much like your aunt, do you know that?" Aphrodite muttered with a frown before she grinned, "I demand a performance." "See, come again." Aphrodite giggled at his confused face, "Oh please. You know what I mean. Like what you did for those at the other camp. Something fun, flashy. Something Greek. You do know that performance nearly got me killed, right?" Naruto deadpanned as he emphasized that what had happened was not, in any way, planned with the details. Do something fun. After this whole mess is over. Get your brothers and sisters in on it for all I care, Aphrodite continued before becoming stern, "but focus on love." Naruto gaped at the goddess of love and wondered why she wanted him to do something his father would be more than happy to ask for. Before he could ask Aphrodite what she meant, Ares opened the door, reached into the limo and grabbed his shoulder. "Time's up, punk," Ares grumbled as he pulled the blonde out, slamming the door shut after doing so. After Naruto landed on his ass in the Arizona desert, he looked up to see Aphrodite smiling at him from the open window. "Good luck on your quest, Naruto," she said as Ares started her limousine back up, "and do use protection. Chiron can hardly handle the teenagers, let's not leave that old horse with baby issues, non." As the goddess limo drove away, Naruto had one thought in his head, what did she really want from me? Percy sighed as he stirred his milkshake while leaning against the once again dark building. He had rejoined the group at the small building, which turned out to be a small restaurant, and had gotten a chocolate shake to drown his troubles away while he thought about what he had just discussed with Aphrodite. Or rather, what she had informed him about. The others had left him to think while they waited for Naruto to come back and make a game plan, which he was grateful for. Percy had never before felt so relieved that the quest wasn't his. It let him focus on what the goddess of love had told him, which he wasn't sure if it was serious news or just gossip from how she said it. Aphrodite had warned him that the hunters were recruiting Annabeth, and that they couldn't be trusted. She revealed that she also gave the Stahl brothers the shirt laced with centaur blood to limit the amount of hunters going on the quest and possibly getting Annabeth to go with them, but Naruto had stopped that plan. Twice in fact, much to her annoyance. He didn't know what to think. Was Annabeth going to leave the camp? Just like that? All because of Luke? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash of light and a voice asking from behind him, "So what did Aphrodite say to you?" Percy did not scream like a girl, no matter what Naruto or Thalia may say. He did make an impressive impression of a grasshopper with his jump, though. Turning to glare at the older teen, Percy said, "Don't do that." "Do what?" Naruto countered with a grin before he vanished once more and reappeared behind the younger demigod. "This. Yes. That." Percy cried out as he faced the blonde again. Naruto crossed his arms and nodded his head. "I give no promises," he replied childishly, before he became serious once again. "So, what did Aphrodite say to you?" She said that we'd have to go through her husband's junkyard, but to not take anything." Percy answered with a shrug. Naruto nodded and then stared intently at the teen, disturbing Percy. The raven-haired teen fidgeted uncomfortably before asking, "What are you looking at me like that for?" "I'm waiting for you to tell me what else she said," Naruto insisted, his eyes narrowing. "Well, that was it," Percy lied as he shifted his weight. Naruto frowned. "Right, and I'm the unicorn wizard. I ride for justice on a comet of stars, and have a sidekick named Princess Handjob," sarcastically replied the older teen, and making Percy stifle a snicker at the name of the sidekick. Naruto shook his head. "Look, just tell me what she told you and I'll leave you alone. I know she said something and I know when you're lying." The younger teen gave him a look of disbelief, to which Naruto rolled his eyes. "Dad's the god of truths. Your eyes aren't meeting mine." Your heartbeat increased slightly and your fingers continued to twitch nervously. Percy, seeing no way out of it after being outed the way he was, sighed. "All right," she said, "the hunters couldn't be trusted. That they were recruiting Annabeth. That's why they showed up in Maine." Naruto hummed and held his chin while he thought before speaking. Interesting, Annie must have been feeling insignificant or useless. Why would she feel that way? Percy asked curiously. He had never thought that Annabeth, who helped him slay Medusa and rescue Grover, would feel insignificant or useless when she seemingly did so much already. Naruto sighed and scratched his head. "Look, I don't know if I should tell you this, because I haven't told Thalia or Grover yet. You know I was part of their group, right?" "Yeah, so. What we haven't told you is that I found Annabeth first," Naruto continued. "I found her when I was in San Francisco following a clue my dad left me as to his identity. She was sneaking around to find shelter. She told me who and what she was after I saved her from some street punks picking on her for entering their turf. I put two and two together and decided to go with her. This was before I knew who my dad was, mind you, so I was all for going to a camp and meeting some family. I was her companion to New York, where my dad gave me a place to live which I should probably make sure is still untouched from her house in San Francisco. We traveled for 3 months on foot, fighting monsters along the way." "Whoa," Percy said in awe. "Now what I'm going to tell you is between us. You don't repeat it. Ever. Got it?" Naruto asked while glaring down at the younger teen. Percy nodded. "Give me your word," Naruto insisted, "that you will not repeat it until Annabeth tells you about our traveling." "I swear not to repeat it, but she said it was her mother who guided her," Percy replied in confusion. Naruto grinned. "Aunt Athena, eh? Good cover. You could say it was her wisdom that led us through the night," Naruto replied with a smirk as he crossed his arms and leaned back against the wall. "Well, along the way, fighting the monsters, I was the only one fighting. Annabeth always hid, before or after I would tell her to, which gave me a heart attack every time she vanished. Though, she was a thinker, not a fighter. A builder, too," Percy sighed, thinking about his crush and her constant rambling over architecture facts that most of the time flew over his head. "She still rambles about buildings?" Naruto asked incredulously before looking at the stars and shaking his head. "Annie, I miss her." Percy looked at the older teen questionably, making Naruto answer his unasked question. "She's my little sister, Jackson. It's been 7 years since we last saw each other and only a few days after we reunite, we're separated again. Reminds me of Auntie Arte and my dick of a dad." Percy nervously looked up and eyed the skies, waiting for retribution, before looking at Naruto with a jealous frown. "How do you get away with that?" "What? Insulting my dad?" Naruto asked. Getting a nod, Naruto chuckled. "Well, my dad's one of the most laid-back gods, right up there with Uncle Herm. Dad feels bad that he can't visit his kids, being in charge of the sun and all, but see, he forgot about me for 15 years of my life. He feels bad about leaving me where I was born after what he was forced to do." "Are you sure he forgot?" "Maybe your mom was lying to you to protect you," Percy interjected. "My mom did that." Naruto chuckled. "I wish, kind of hard to lie to me when you die after I'm born, though." "Oh, sorry," apologized the son of Poseidon. What was he supposed to say to that? Percy didn't know how he would have turned out if he didn't have his mother. Seriously, with a woman like Sally Jackson as your mother, there's no shame in being a mama's boy. "Don't worry about it," Naruto shrugged before looking back up at the sky. I'm used to it. Yeah, because that helps. Percy thought, feeling even worse than before. However, my granduncle/boss gave me a sweet deal to visit my mom whenever I wanted to. Though I think that's because he's trying to hook me up with Hecate and keep me under his employ for the rest of my life. Naruto mumbled out the last bit, before his eyes widened. Crap. I gotta check that paper for any marriage traps. Marriage what? Percy asked, catching the last statement after he zoned out when the older teen alluded to Hades. His uncle was one freaky dude, not to mention a jerk for kidnapping his mother. Nothing, just a problem I'll have to deal with later, Naruto grumbled as he massaged his temples. He looked up at the dark sky and sighed, great, there's another hour gone. Come on, Jackson, let's get the others and tell them about Uncle Hepha's junkyard. Naruto walked away from the building and went towards the group. Percy quickly followed after him. They regrouped and Naruto explained the situation, getting everyone ready to go, until Grover asked the question that put the group on hold once more. So what did Aphrodite want from you, Naruto? Asked the satyr curiously. Naruto immediately blushed upon recalling what he went through in the pink limo, and Thalia, who started to grit her teeth, noticed this. Before he could deflect the question and recover from his small blush, Naruto found himself pulled nose to nose with the punk daughter of Zeus. Naruto's gulp was audible to the remaining four, and allowed the two remaining males to sit back and watch the show. Zoe and Phoebe on the other hand felt their eyes twitch at the sight as they wanted to finish the quest as soon as possible. What did she want from you, Naruto? Thalia asked with a tone that promised pain if he tried to get out of answering. Resigning his fate, Naruto looked to the ground and mumbled incoherently. He was immediately shocked by the girl he kissed and forced to look her in the eye. Louder. Thalia growled as she held the blonde teen by the collar of his jacket. Is it wrong that I find this hot? A small voice asked in the back of Naruto's mind. It was immediately banished by the blonde, who repeated himself, she wanted me to put together a concert for Camp Half-Blood. Percy and Grover looked at each other before stifling a snicker. Seriously? She wanted the blonde to put on a concert? That sounded so stupid. What else? That can't have been it. Thalia pushed with a frown. Naruto swallowed nervously as he thought of what to do. Does he tell her what he knows and risk their relationship, or does he hold it back? I can't say, he said after a moment of thinking up a lie. She made me swear not to speak of it. Thalia looked at him for a long moment before releasing her grip on his jacket, shoving him away with a growl. Fine. The raven-haired girl abruptly turned around and began storming off. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck as he watched her storm towards the west. He saw the flash of betrayal and hurt that flashed across her eyes, but he couldn't tell her about that camp. Not yet. Damn it, why did his dad have to be the god of truths? Why did horrible lying have to be hereditary in Apollo's gene pool? With a resigned sigh, he gestured for the others to follow him and they quickly caught up with the fuming daughter of Zeus. Thalia flexed her hands as she continued to storm on through the night. Why didn't he trust her? Wasn't it enough that she trusted him? Maybe it was because he still thought she needed to be protected. She hadn't needed to be protected since she was a little girl. He was my first kiss, wasn't it enough that I gave him that? What else does he want? Does he want me to tell him that I? Thalia felt like tearing her hair out with how useless this thought process was. If she couldn't even admit to how she felt about him in her head, how did she expect to express herself to him vocally? Penny for your thoughts. Thalia jumped as Grover walked up next to her. She looked ahead and took notice of Naruto and Percy talking about their early adventures, Naruto's over the past 7 years and Percy's previous 2 quests, while Zoe and Phoebe seemed to be having their own discussion. What are you doing back here, Grover? The daughter of Zeus asked with a frown. I thought you'd be up there with my waterlogged cousin and the blonde idiot. Grover chuckled. Yeah, Thalia, don't you think you're being a little pushy? What do you mean pushy? The girl countered as her eyes narrowed. Sensing danger, Grover explained himself. Thalia, you're not the only one that doesn't know everything about him. We were going to once we got to camp, but we've never did get all of Naruto's story because he, you know. Yeah, that reminds me, I have to kick his ass for making us leave him behind, Thalia said with a smirk. Grover smiled back at her, prompting her to drop her smirk and sigh sadly. She looked up and watched as the blonde smacked Percy upside the head for something, reminding her of what he used to do with Luke when they were just walking through the city. He didn't have to stay behind, Thalia whispered with a frown, we could have handled them as a group. Thalia, none of us were ready to face the bull man, Grover replied, putting a hand on her shoulder reassuringly, at least he had that clone thing to back him up when he fought against that horde. And you're not the only one who feels like we let him down. Annabeth, me, even Luke. But it wasn't you that thing was after. Thalia retorted as her eyes moistened, coming to a stop and facing the satyr, it was my fault. He pushed me away when I could have helped him. I should have ran back to help him anyway. Then you wouldn't be here now, Grover argued, Annabeth would have been broken from losing her older sister and Luke would have snapped at losing his first friend. Like he did already? When he poisoned me while I was a tree. Thalia spat, the betrayal of one of her earliest friends was something she didn't want to think about. Like Annabeth, she hoped that there would be a chance to return Luke back to how he was before. Grover couldn't think of a response. How could he? He didn't feel direct betrayal from being poisoned and nearly killed by Luke. Sure, he felt betrayed that Luke has turned against the camp, but so did Annabeth and a good portion of Camp Half-Blood. He was the Naruto of the camp, older, funny, cheerful, and upbeat. Always helping the campers that he could when he could, regardless of their cabin. You could say that Luke was keeping Naruto alive after his death. Hey, we're going to, Thalia-chan, what's wrong? Speak of the devil and he shall appear in a flash of golden light. The first thing Naruto noticed were the tears threatening to fall, and the last thing he expected was to be embraced by the daughter of Zeus. Shuddering and choked sobs escaped the 15-year-old girl, making Naruto frown as he quickly hugged her back. Rubbing her back, he looked at Grover, who silently told him to take care of it before running off to regroup with the others. Sheesh, Thalia-chan, what's wrong? Naruto asked, slightly worried as this was very out of character for the girl in his arms. Thalia pulled herself together and rested her head on the teen's chest before softly replying. Having not heard her, Naruto asked, what did you say? Don't leave me, Thalia pleaded, looking up at him, please, I can't lose anyone else. Not like I did Jason and Luke. Naruto's jaw twitched, but he shook the feeling off and hugged her tighter. He leaned down and captured her lips once again in a soft kiss. Thalia slowly relaxed into the kiss, her cheeks heating up and her depression falling away. After a good few seconds, they parted and Naruto rested his forehead on hers like he had before. They stayed like that for a few moments, electric blue eyes staring into blue eyes with a second ring of gold around it. Naruto broke the silence, speaking softly, I can't guarantee that I won't die again, Thalia-chan, but I'll do my damn best not to. Even if I do, Lord Hades himself will have to drag me to Tartarus before I leave you. Promise? Thalia asked in a similar soft tone. Naruto grinned at her and stole another kiss. When they broke, he whispered out, it's the promise of a lifetime. Chapter 14. Naruto and Thalia regrouped with the others a few minutes after Thalia had recomposed herself. The moon was further west than normal, but the group attributed that to Apollo resuming his duty. Naruto called for everyone to make camp and be ready to wake up bright and early. Once he found a place to lie down, Naruto immediately passed out with a snore. Percy saw this and a dark eyebrow went up in amusement while he thought, guess making out and running from a giant pig is exhausting. Wonder which one took more out of him? Figures, Thalia murmured as she sat down next to the blonde on his left. The raven-haired teenager lay on her side, looking at the snoring blonde with a small smile on her face. Her eyes shut while she focused on the sound of his snores. Phoebe and Zoe chose to sleep to Naruto's right with a good distance between them. Grover went to take the closest spot by the hunters, but was stopped by his amused yet exasperated friend when Percy grabbed the satyr's arm and shook his head no. You can kiss their butts tomorrow, Percy grumbled as he plopped down and closed his eyes, sleep time now. Grover sighed but agreed, falling to his back with a grunt before he joined the others in the realm of Morpheus. Naruto's eyes snapped open just as the sun began to rise in the distance. With a grumble, he hugged his pillow tighter and rested his cheek against the fuzzy edging. It took a few seconds before Naruto made the realization that he didn't fall asleep with a pillow, let alone a body-sized one. Blue eyes with miniature sun-like pupils snapped open before looking down at his pillow. The blonde's face quickly became red at what he found. Thalia had at some time in the night moved to lie next to him, resulting in their current spooning position. The blonde briefly wondered if a quick kawarimi with someone else would benefit him or if his best course of action would be to jump up from his position. He wouldn't have the chance to do either as Thalia started to stir. "MN. Stupid rocks," grumbled the raven-haired girl as she shuffled in her sleep in an effort to get even more comfortable. When that failed, she reached behind her towards Naruto's waist where his morning issue was pressing against her. Naruto opened his mouth to say something, but it became a squeak when Thalia successfully grabbed the offending rock and began pushing it away from her, though it was more along the lines of rubbing Naruto. Not too keen on getting caught in this embarrassing situation, Naruto quickly grabbed her wrist and pulled his hips back away from her. He quickly released her arm and pulled his other hand out from its resting place, rolling to face the other direction with a burning face. "Well, thankfully no one I know witnessed that," Naruto thought in relief. Meanwhile on Olympus, Apollo was doubled over in laughter, tears escaping his eyes at what had nearly happened to his son. Sure, he thought that watching his kid sleep was weird, but when he saw the daughter of Zeus had cuddled up to him, he had to see it play out. Not to mention Artemis wasn't around to scold him for being so immature. The thought of his sister made Apollo's laughter die out before he sighed, "Better get back to the search." "Do me proud, little maelstrom," Apollo thought with a smile as he returned to Seoul with a flash of light. Naruto sneezed as he stretched. Rubbing his nose, the blonde looked at the sun with an accusing glare. After a moment of silence, he decided to start waking the others up. Going around the small camp, he started to jostle his fellow quest-goers awake. Thalia woke up with a small glare that he thought was cute, Percy wiped away the drool that had pooled up around his mouth, and Grover spat out the dead bush he was gnawing on in his sleep. Waking the hunters proved to be unnecessary, as they had woken up to Naruto's sneeze. The Guardian grinned at his fully awakened group before looking to the west. Looking back, he recapped the plan. "All right, we're going to head towards Uncle Hepfa's junkyard. Remember, don't take anything." The group nodded back to him and they began their trek towards the junkyard in question. Naruto led the way with Thalia close behind him. After a few minutes of silent traveling, Percy spoke, "So, maybe I should have said this earlier, but Apollo gave me some advice. If it had anything to do with girls, I suggest you just forget about it," Naruto quickly replied with a smirk. Thalia snickered while the two hunters smirked at the jab of their goddess-womanizing brother. "Well, yeah, I did that already," Percy returned with his own small smile, "but I'm talking about the quest. He said something about this guy near us." "Nereus?" Naruto and Zoe corrected before eyeing each other. Naruto spoke first, "Jinx. You owe me ramen." "Tisk, I owe thou nothing," scoffed the hunter with a frown. Naruto countered, "You so owe me ramen. I jinxed you, therefore, you owe me ramen. I was under the assumption that you and Grace were, what do they say today, an item? Do you really prefer ramen to her?" Phoebe asked with a smirk. The group laughed as the two turned red and started to splutter out excuses while they walked. Thalia at the claim of the two demigods being an item and Naruto at the insinuation that he might be gay. "How do you not know what ramen is?" Naruto finally asked when he got his blush under control. "It's the food of the gods." "I thought that was ambrosia," Percy teased. "Same thing," dismissed Naruto. "Dad told me that in the east they found a stash of ambrosia and managed to liquefy it. They added the ambrosia to a bowl of noodles and thus began the wonderful gift to man known as ramen." "Holy crap, are you serious?" Thalia asked with wide eyes as the others stared at his back. "Nope," Naruto replied with a grin. "Mortals and monsters can't eat ambrosia, Thalia-chan, but they created the equivalent to it. It is ramen. It's even in the name. Amen. Hallelujah, praise the gods above for the delicious food they bestowed unto us." Thalia stared at the blonde before smacking him upside the head for his lame attempt at a joke. Naruto blinked twice before looking at her with a glare. "First of all, ow," the blonde said before grinning once more, and secondly Zoe-chan still owes me ramen. I owe you nothing. Zoe growled in frustration. Percy and Grover stifled their snickers when she locked a glare on them. Phoebe and Thalia still smirked despite the warning look the lieutenant sent their way. You keep telling yourself that, waved off the blonde. He looked at the son of Poseidon with an arched brow. So, my dad said to find Nereus. Yeah, to know why, though, shrugged out Percy. Naruto nodded with a hum of thought. Well, we'll deal with that when we get to California, the blonde said. He's a sea immortal, so he'll most likely be around the coast. Indeed, Zoe agreed, we must make haste. For the love of, no one says that anymore, Nightshade. Thalia said with an annoyed look on her face. Ah, leave it be, Thalia-chan, Naruto said with a smile, it's not Zoe-chan's fault she's so inept to the ways of modern English. Can you imagine how she'd react to Ebonix? Not waiting for a response, he turned back around and peered ahead. Well, I'm not usually a betting man, but $10 says that's Uncle Hepha's junkyard. The other 5 followed his gaze before their eyes landed on a large fenced-off area with several large silhouettes. The group returned to their silent trek as they raced towards the junkyard. As they got closer, Naruto's left wrist started to burn, though he pushed the feeling away. Upon reaching the main gates after a good 10 minutes of walking, Naruto was gritting his teeth at the pain his bracelet was giving him. He slowed down, gaining the attention of the others who followed his example, before he came to a complete stop. Naruto grabbed at his wrist with a pained groan and fell to one knee. The blonde glared at the bracelet. What is your deal, Q? Well, so what Madara-sama said is true, a voice familiar only to one member of the group said. Naruto quickly turned around and glared at the tall blue man with a shark-like face. He wore a black cloak with red clouds decorating it and a face guard that had a metal plate similar to Naruto's belt, only with 4 squiggling lines and sliced across. He had piercing golden eyes and spiked navy blue hair. Sharp teeth were revealed in a sinister smirk as the man swung a giant bundle of bandages over his shoulder. Kisame, Naruto growled, his eyes flickering red, how did you get here? You know this guy? Percy asked quietly. Unfortunately, Naruto replied as he stood up while still holding his arm, answer me, fish face. How'd you get here? Tisk, not that it's any of your business brat, but I was given a ride here by Madara-sama, Kisame answered before smirking once again. His language changed to English and with a very heavy accent, he asked, so, we going to do this the easy way, or am I going to have to shave your legs off? You're going to try, Naruto replied with a scowl as he sent chakra through his bracelet and announced, roar for me. What's this? A new trick? Kisame asked with a grin. The rest of the group was taking steps back as Kisame's killing intent started to leak out from his excitement. Percy felt like he was choking on air, that the blue fish guy was going to kill him in one of the most brutal manners he could think of. Naruto held his left arm out as a red light emitted from the wristband. His shield and sword reappeared and Naruto quickly grabbed the handle of his blade, making the fox-like face on his shield glare at the human Biju. Ha 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 ha. Look at you, brat, playing swordsman, how cute, Kisame laughed out as he swung his blade into the ground. Alright, let's see just how good at Kenjutsu you are. Guys. Naruto called out, snapping them from their varied hallucinations, on my mark, run for it. I'll hold him off as best I can. You want us to leave you here against that? Percy cried out in disbelief. Naruto looked over his shoulder at him with a stern glare. Yes. None of you are ready to face Kisame, Naruto answered while internally he continued, neither am I. I'm nowhere near prepared to fight an S-ranked nin. My best chance is to use that, stall and then run for it. Are you insane? Thalia asked him with a growl, we're not going to leave you behind, Whiskers. We'll take him down together. No, you won't. Naruto shouted at her, causing her to step back at the fierce response. He glared at her and then back at the still smirking Kisame, if you fought against him, Thalia, you'd die within minutes. This isn't a mindless monster that has a weakness. This is a human on par with Herc the Jerk in terms of strength and a master swordsman from my homeland. He's here for one thing. And I've got you this time, you fucking brat. Kisame announced as he suddenly appeared in front of Naruto with his massive weapon heaved over his shoulder. His bandaged weapon clanged against Naruto's shield as Naruto tried to hold his ground. This wasn't like fighting Aries' son, no, this was a life-or-death situation that only he had a chance of surviving. Zoe, you're in charge. I'll catch up with you later, now move. Barked out the blonde as he began building up energy from all around him. We have to go. Zoe announced as she and Phoebe began running for the junkyard. Thalia hesitated, looking at the struggling blonde with an obvious conflict written on her face before his eyes met hers. His eyes narrowed and she took the hint, turning to follow after the uneasy Percy and Grover. The others didn't see the tears well up in her eyes as she thought back to the last time he forced her to move on. Naruto grit his teeth as he felt Samehada start to drain him through the connection with his shield. Kisame's grin became wider as Naruto made a desperate slash with his sword at Kisame's open arm. The former shinobi of Kirigakure no Sato took the hit and kicked the blonde away, the grin on his face not once dying out as the blonde soared backwards before landing on the rough topsoil of the desert on his back. Come on brat, 7 years later I'd have expected some sort of challenge. Kisame taunted with a smirk. And I expected you to have been made into someone's sushi dish by now, Naruto returned with a scowl. He pushed himself to his feet and charged forward, ducking under Kisame's surprisingly fast swing while simultaneously slashing at the man's side. A backhanded fist made him stumble backwards before he had to roll out of the way of a downward falling Samehada. Kisame chuckled as he spun the handle of his blade in his hand, causing more of the bindings to come undone. The blonde felt his blood leave his face as he paled when the full form of Samehada was revealed. The sword laughed at him, making his stomach flip in worry. I told my leader that I'd be quick so that those pesky immortals don't find out about our plan, Kisame said as he gave his sword an affectionate pat. Now hold still so I can shave your arms and legs off. Naruto narrowed his eyes and sheathed his blade. He rotated his shield-wearing arm's shoulder and the Arcadia shield spun around. With his determined eyes locked on his current foe, Naruto spoke with conviction in his voice, Lord of the Wild, Lord of the Land, I call upon the power of Pan. Shield of Pan, reveal your true form, in payment, I sacrifice my own arm. His words finished, the Arcadia shield started to glow and the blonde started to show signs of using nature chakra. Naruto released a bellow of pain as the Arcadia shield started to segment itself and expanded up to his shoulder. The shield wrapped around his arm, replacing muscle and bone with solid metal. The blade once sheathed within had become fused with a gauntlet that seemed a size too large for the blonde. Now his left arm was easily twice the size of his right and Naruto's left side of his face gained several red segments of metal that matched his new arm. Heh, that's new. Guess I better stop playing around, Kisame commented as he stabbed Samehada into the ground. He rapidly started going through some hand seals, Suten, Bakuzu Ishiha, water release, exploding water colliding wave. Raising his left hand to cup his mouth, Kisame's cheeks swelled up before he began to spew water to the point that Naruto became concerned he was facing a direct relative of Percy's, or worse, a descendant of Oceanus. Jumping over the water with the chakra forced into his legs, Naruto bypassed the raging liquid with his new fist cocked back, say it, don't spray it, asshole. Kisame was impressed that the brat managed to avoid being hit by the rushing water, something even elite jonin struggled with when they fought, but he was downright pissed when the blonde's fist collided with his jaw. Like he had done to Naruto, Kisame soared away from his makeshift lake. After he stopped skidding along the dirt, Kisame got to his feet with an angry scowl, you little shit. Sticks and stones, sushi man, Naruto taunted. He was panting heavily and that was because he hadn't trained enough to use his full-on Sage mode with the Arcadia fusion yet. Mostly because he wasn't too keen on sacrificing a limb each time he had to use it, but like with pain, Naruto had to go all out against the S-ranked missing ninja from the get-go or he'd have be dead in minutes. Perhaps even less. Oh, that's it. You're going to make Samehada real happy as she feasts on your flesh, Kisame snarled as he raced forward. Naruto deflected the swung blade and countered with a left cross to the blue man. Kisame grunted and stumbled backwards before swinging again, cheeky little shit. Just die already. Can't do that, Naruto replied as he ducked under the swing and pulled his hand back, I promised someone important to me that I wouldn't die just yet. Naruto's fist flew forward and impacted right in the Akatsuki member's stomach, knocking the wind out of him. Naruto then used the Hiraishin to reappear behind Kisame, throwing out all sorts of left-handed combos against the older shinobi's unguarded back. His barrage finished, Naruto returned to the front of his opponent and his large left hand opened wide. Kisame, looking through a squinting eye, suddenly groaned as he saw a bright golden ball spin to life in Naruto's hand. "It's been fun, Kisame, but I've got things to do, goddesses to save, you know how it is," Naruto said with a smirk as he brought his arm forward. "Eat this." Teiyoton, Rasengan, Sun Release, Spiraling Sphere. Kisame's arm moved quickly, bringing Samehada down to defend himself and absorb the chakra attack coming his way. What he didn't know, however, was that Naruto's new god-enhanced nature chakra was far too potent for the sword to handle, resulting in it failing to defend him. The handheld sun easily broke through Samehada's scales, cracking the base of the sword while also forcing Kisame to once again soar through the air, this time over 50 feet away. When the giant blue man hit the ground, a silent scream escaped his lips as the previously attacked back was shattered on impact. His spine was, thankfully in his case, still intact, but was heavily bruised and all the nerves underneath the bruises were sending alerts to the man's brain. His body caught up with the damage it was dealt and he coughed up blood. Placing his empty hand on the ground, Kisame struggled to get back up, collapsing back to the earth with blood pooling around him. Resting on a knee, Naruto panted while glaring at the downed shinobi, waiting a few moments to see if the man would get back to his feet. Cautiously approaching the body, Naruto reached down and pressed his normal hand's 2 fingers against the man's neck, searching for a pulse. There was none. Glad to know that the man was dead from the blows that would crumble boulders, Naruto drunkenly ran towards the junkyard, hoping to regroup before he lost the dwindling sage mode and consequently his arm. And then there's that whole blood loss issue. Passing out so close to a stronger enemy determined to try and retrieve the Kyubi no Kitsune was not a good idea for the one that knew where the creature was. Even if said enemy was dead, the allies of said enemy would consequently try to capture him in his weak state, which was something he really couldn't afford right now. "We shouldn't have left him," Thalia shouted as she and Zoe argued in the middle of the large junkyard. "Did you see that guy? He's a monster." "Thou heard Uzumaki," Zoe retorted, "we wouldn't have stood a chance. Not to mention we still have to find Lady Artemis. So you're willing to sacrifice any of us just to save her? Is that all a hunter is?" Thalia accused. "Thy mouth shall get thou in trouble, Grace." Zoe snapped angrily, "Uzumaki knows that man, he is best suited to stall and retreat." "You felt that shockwave, don't pretend you didn't," cried out the daughter of Zeus. "He could be in trouble, or. Thalia, Percy said, stepping forward and putting a hand on the older girl's shoulder. Her attention on him, the younger demigod continued, "He's gonna be okay. Look, I may not be his best friend, but even I know when to admit someone's stronger than me. Hell, he beat Ares in a prank war. How many demigods can claim that?" Thalia gave a small smile while rubbing at her eyes. Thanks, Kelphead. An insult? Percy inwardly complained before shaking that kind of thinking off. Thalia was still worrying about the blonde and was struggling to keep up her tough girl routine. She was doing a good job at that, in Percy's opinion. "Well, didn't expect a speech from you, Saltwater Breath," panted out a familiar blonde as he entered the clearing. The 3 campers looked at him before exclaiming his name in relief. Thalia mimicked his ability to teleport with how fast she moved to his side. Before he could protest, Thalia engulfed him in a hug. "Ow. Shit. Fucking gods damn it." The blonde screamed in his mind. Thalia suddenly gasped as Naruto released a cry of pain when his arm vanished. Falling to his side, Naruto grabbed at his missing limb with a scream, "Shit. Naruto. Oh my god, oh my god. Guys, don't just stand there. Help me." Thalia cried out frantically as blood started to leave the blonde. Phoebe moved the increasingly hysteric teen out of her way as she pulled down Naruto's jacket to reveal the missing arm. "Holy Desho gods!" Grover interrupted Percy as they caught a glimpse of the armless teen. "Shit. Gods above, it hurts." Naruto cried out, his eyes clenching shut, "Fuck. This is a lot of blood. How'd you lose it? Where is it? Phoebe asked sternly, looking at the wound while also trying to stop the bleeding. I can reattach it if we get to it quickly enough. I sacrificed it. Ah shit. Fucking gods, I didn't think it hurt this much. Naruto exclaimed as tears left his eyes. You what? Phoebe and Zoe exclaimed with wide eyes. Explain later, I need my bracelet. Naruto cried out, fighting back the tears and the pain. If he went into shock, he wouldn't come back this time. It was part of the agreement the Fates and the Thanatos made with Hades and Persephone to return him back to life. If Naruto died on a quest, no matter what his fate was, he wouldn't be allowed back. Bracelet, Zoe, find the bracelet he's talking about, Phoebe said before grabbing Thalia's shaking arm. You want to help? Then put pressure on his wound. Jackson, Satyr, get me a rag to use. Right. The two cried out as they ran through the junkyard and began searching for a rag to give to the hunter. Zoe was searching where he had come from, spotting a glinting golden edge. She pulled the bracelet from the ground and looked at it. It was a beautifully golden band in the shape of a quadruped animal, like a fox. The animal's head was a red gem, far too red to be a ruby. Take me to the kit. A deep voice demanded. Zoe looked around in worry before looking down at the gem. The ruby-like gem gained a black line, similar to a slitted pupil, before the voice boomed once more, move you stupid nymph. Return me to Naruto's side. At the behest of the strange voice, Zoe ran back to where the blonde was being treated, with Thalia fighting back tears as she held her hands against the wound to stop the bleeding. Naruto's eyes were half open and he was muttering in the strange language that he and his opponent had spoken before. Phoebe was searching her pack for more ambrosia to keep the quest leader with them. Put me on his right wrist, the voice ordered, earning the other girl's attention. Zoe nodded and did as she was told, while inwardly wondering just what Naruto had in his possession. A red glow came from the gem and Naruto's eyes started to change. His normally blue and golden irises turned blood red and his pupils became slits. The sclera turned black as the red light grew in intensity. Thalia released a shocked cry and retracted her hands as bright red energy bubbled over the wound. Before the eyes of the three girls, a new arm started to form. The bones were recreated, quickly followed by the veins and muscle. As the skin started to reform over the new limb, Naruto's eyes faded back to their unusual colors. He looked at the shocked girls' faces and a wry grin crossed his face. Guess I'll be explaining myself when I wake up, Naruto mumbled softly before he passed out from exhaustion. When Naruto was possibly bleeding out from his missing limb, back with the former Kirigakure shinobi, a figure stepped out of a large vortex-like portal. Crouching down next to the large form of the human Biju, the figure glared at his head through the single hole in their orange mask. Tisk, what a waste of time, Madara sneered before standing upright and kicking the corpse in the shoulder. Get up. I know you're still alive. Kisame's eyes snapped open and his shark-like appearance increased when he grinned. What's wrong, Madara? Is Toby too tired to play? Your humor doesn't amuse me, Kisame, Madara growled as the man stood up slowly, wincing as he did so. The legendary Uchiha continued, the only reason you're alive is because of that seal I placed on you. Kisame chuckled before reaching up and adjusting his headband. A piece of paper fell out and landed in his hand, making the blue human chortle darkly as he looked at the intricate script adorning it. To think, this little thing convinced the Kyuubi brat to think my body was dead. Do not underestimate the power of seals, Kisame, Madara cautioned as he took the piece of paper from the man. The Yondai man nearly killed me once with his seal-based ninjutsu, something his son has managed to uncover the secret to. You know, there's something about the fight that bugs me, Kisame mused after a moment of silence. The brat seemed to be unnaturally tired after he whipped out the giant arm. Maybe we should go hunt him down now. No. I expected you to lose anyway, this was merely to test the waters, as they say, Madara replied with a scowl. Besides, those immortals masquerading as gods are watching him as we speak, and the last thing we need to deal with is their interference. What if they find out about our plans? Kisame asked with a frown, well aware of the danger they were on the edge of unleashing. Madara didn't reply, making the shark-like man sigh in acceptance before he smirked yet again. So, I should go after the Hachiba next then. Yes. I have no doubt that Sasuke-kun was unable to capture him. It was merely a test of his loyalty, Madara replied as he opened another portal. Come, we must move quickly. I sense a large amount of power approaching. Kisame nodded and without another word the two stepped into the portal. Just as the portal shut behind him, a stern older man appeared with a bag tied to his waist. Hanging over one shoulder was a large horn. The man looked around before scowling when he took note that one of the strong power signatures he was told to investigate had vanished. Lord Zeus won't be pleased, was all Boreas had to say on the subject before a loud and cold gust of wind came through the area and the god vanished. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.